The position of Canada has always been to bring back peace and stability to the Middle East. Israel has said that they would retaliate and that they would do so, and consequences would be severe. What the G7 has said, all countries of the G7, is that that answer needed to be proportionate. And that's what we'll continue to advocate for.
That's Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly today responding to questions about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's stance on how Israel could retaliate against Iran following last week's ballistic missile attack. Poilievre says he supports Israel targeting Iranian nuclear sites. Have a listen.
If Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said the U.S. would not back a strike on Iranian oil or nuclear facilities. Defense Minister Bill Blair now says oil infrastructure targets are, quote, appropriate. Last week on this program, he told us he did not endorse striking nuclear or oil sites. Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke today for the first time in 7 weeks, as Israel's defense minister warned just after that call its strike against Iran will be, quote, lethal, precise, and surprising. David Petrayis is a retired United States Army general and former director of the CIA. Hi, General Petrayis. It's good to see you again. Thank you for making the time.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Israel's defense minister today warned that his country's retaliation on Iran would be, quote, deadly, precise, and surprising. How do you interpret that?
I think it'll be all three of those things. Those are the qualities that it will represent. Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu talked with President Biden today. I'm sure they discussed the range of targets, which would extend everything from military through infrastructure to even the nuclear program, which I think is unlikely. I also tend to think that infrastructure that would affect the flow of crude oil, distillates, and so forth out of the Gulf, probably not this round. But I think they're going to see very significant strikes against a variety of military-related targets and infrastructure, and especially those that support various of Iran's nefarious actions supporting these malign proxies, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, Shia militia in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen.
Why is your sense that nuclear targets are less likely? And I ask because obviously it's been a live discussion south of the border where you are, with President Biden saying unequivocally he would not endorse or back that kind of a strike. In this country, our government has said something similar. The defense minister here has said something similar, but the leader of our conservative opposition has said that he would back something like targeting nuclear facilities in Iran. Why do you see it as less likely?
Well, it's in part what you've just described. I mean, as a CIA director, you learn how to deal with the world the way it is and the context in the way that it is, not perhaps what you'd like it to be or what have you. Not that I would necessarily advocate for strikes on that program at this point in time unilaterally by Israel. Look, it's all publicly known that Israel has extraordinary capacity and capability, and also, obviously, diabolical creativity, as we've seen in the supply chain attacks and the pagers and the walkie-talkies and so forth against Hezbollah. That have basically decimated Hezbollah's ranks, not just decapitated the leadership, but thousands of leaders, not just a handful. Given all that, nonetheless, there are limits to their capability, and it's publicly known that there are certain nuclear sites that they cannot deal with unless there's some really diabolically clever plan that would be very difficult to pull off without U.S. assistance. And if the U.S. president, who has been unequivocally supporting Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israelis, despite publicly announcing misgivings at times, reservation, look, there are always differences of opinion between coalition leaders. I just find it unlikely that that would happen. By the way, it always so brings to mind Winston Churchill's quote that the only thing worse than fighting with allies is fighting without them. And I lived that experience leading to coalitions in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
What do you anticipate the reaction from Iran would be like, or how do you think it would inform the reaction from Iran if either nuclear or oil facilities were targeted?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on either of those, frankly, without knowing specifically what does it really do, what are the implications. You can have endless speculation about this otherwise. Again, I would just stick with an anticipation that you probably don't. It's the base case, at least, is that you would not see significant nuclear-related targets. Keep in mind, by the way, though, that Israel did demonstrate a capacity with their quite measured response to the previous Iranian attack, when Iran, from their own soil for the first time, launched ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at Israel, some 330 or so of them, virtually all of which were knocked down and none of which had any real impact. And they launched a missile that penetrated the supposedly sophisticated Russian air defenses that protected Esfahan airfield, which is in proximity to 3 different nuclear sites. So we already know that Iran's defenses can be penetrated, and that was a very simplistic attack, not the kind of sophisticated attack that Israel could mount and may mount this time if they combine all of the different capabilities that they have, from, again, ballistic missiles, drones, manned aircraft, and all of the standoff capabilities, and then even direct capabilities if it comes to that.
We're very used to watching Iran fight wars through proxy.
Yes.
I'm wondering what your
assessment. That's their preferred method.
Right. I'm wondering what your assessment is at this juncture, though, of the risk of a conventional war between Israel and Iran. You've written in the past that neither party really wanted that, or was they both kind of understood the stakes of that. Do you think that's still the case, or has your assessment of that risk evolved at all given the events of the past number of weeks?
I think there is greater risk, but I still think that in this case, the base case would be that still is likely to be the situation. A lot is going to ride on how Iran responds to this particular Israeli retaliation. If it continues to escalate, Israel has extraordinary capacity and capability. Iran needs to recognize that. I think they do. They're starting to run out of options. Hezbollah is getting hammered. Not to say that they aren't going to be resilient or that they're going to be destroyed or anything like that, but the damage to their most important proxy, who they counted on, really, as having a capability that does not appear to manifest itself right now, provided by Iran over many, many years, particularly since the war in 2006. These other proxies, they're problematic, but nowhere near the capacity of Hezbollah. And of course, Hamas has been dramatically degraded, albeit not yet destroyed. And unless Israel provides this vision for the future of Gaza, which should be one that provides a better future for the Palestinian people there, with Hamas out of their midst, and can only be achieved, in my view, by Israel securing, essentially reoccupying Gaza, but without any kind of settlements and the rest of that, and with a clear plan of transition to trained and equipped Palestinian forces that are reliable, probably trained and equipped at the Jordanian International Police Training Center by Americans. That's the only viable alternative that can ensure that Hamas is never part of the governance structure, and that, by the way, Hamas is truly destroyed. Destruction means that the enemy cannot even reconstitute. And what Israel's doing right now in Gaza, having dramatically degraded Hamas and now controlling the southern border between Gaza and the Sinai, Egypt, which prevents the reuse of the tunnels underneath that area to provide arms, ammunition, explosives, and other material for Gaza, as has been the case in the past. Still, you have to prevent Hamas from reconstituting. And then the clear and leave operations that they're conducting, akin to what we were doing in Iraq in 2006, prior to the surge, do not prevent reconstitution. In fact, they leave a vacuum, and the vacuum is generally being filled by sizable remnants of Hamas, nowhere near the organization they were before, criminal elements, and then some remnants of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The only way to truly destroy them is by securing the area sequentially, series of walls and gated communities, as we described it when we did Fallujah, Ramadi, Bakuba, and these others. And we produced a better future for the Iraqi people by getting al-Qaeda and the Sunni insurgents out of their neighborhoods and then keeping them out until it was very clear to the people that they should not ever want them back in, and they should support what it was we were trying to do, and then would hand off to the Iraqi government over time. By the way, Arab countries aren't going to go in there. Americans aren't going to go in there. NGOs can't really do that much in there unless you have security, in which case everything is possible. You can also bring in contractors to thicken the whole effort. But again, none of that is possible without security. And I don't see an alternative to this, knowing that Israel doesn't want to reoccupy, the U.S. doesn't want them to reoccupy. But again, if you don't do clear hold and build, you're not going to provide a better future for the Palestinian people over a period of time, probably a long period, remove the incentive and inclination to support groups like Hamas, and show that Palestinians and Israeli Jews can live side by side in harmony.
You mentioned, though, I remember, I think it was almost a year ago when we spoke at the outset of the war, that the sort of that exit plan or the plan in general needs to be, laid out by Israel so that there can be, for lack of a better term, buy-in. Because my sense is, I don't know, when you talk about, Palestinians having faith that kind of a future is possible, that possibility seems very degraded a year out at this point, and there is not really a laying out of the plan as you speak to it. Is that still an issue, do you think?
It's a huge issue. And in fact, the Minister of Defense of Israel has called for such a plan. Keep in mind, there's more than a little bit of friction between him and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Remember, he was fired one time and then brought back a week later because of public pressure. Benny Gantz, the former Minister of Defense, former Chief of Staff of the IDF, also called for this when he was part of that coalition with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think there's very clear recognition that this is needed. There are political challenges to it. Some of the more right-wing members of the coalition are just not interested in it. They're not concerned with the seeming humanitarian catastrophe on the ground, but should be. Again, everybody should be seized with this and not paint every Palestinian in Gaza as Hamas or even a Hamas sympathizer, although there's plenty of that, until they recognize that what Hamas brought on them was completely avoidable. That is at the feet of Hamas. And by the way, Hamas did not achieve its objectives in this. It's brought about its own ruin by and large, although it is not destroyed yet. And you have to truly ensure that they cannot reconstitute, and there's no other way to do that than to establish security, and Israel has to take the lead in doing that. They cannot expect Americans or Gulf state service members or even Palestinians to come in and do that for them, I don't think, nor should they want that, actually.
I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I appreciate your time and analysis, as always, General Petrayis. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you again. Thank you.